Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. In this episode, you'll hear part 2 of my conversation with Jill Petersen Adams from Oxford College of Emory University. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app.
You are about to hear part 2 of our conversation with Jill Petersen Adams from Oxford College of Emory University. Please be sure to listen to our previous episode to hear part 1 of this conversation.
Now, going back to one more thing what you are currently doing, which is you're directing the global learning and undergraduate research, programs. Global learning in 2020 and
I
21.
know!
What are you doing?
Yes. So, okay. A lot of waiting and hoping. But so there were these like major pandemic related moments that shifted the landscape and then shifted the landscape again from what my work is. And so we had students who were actively abroad in March, on spring break travel components as the pandemic was unfolding in the US and borders were closing. So there was really interesting experience, like getting them back, working with their parents. We knew we had to arrange a whole lot of risk management before they went to even think about traveling in March at all. But so like that was kind of the first wave. And then the second wave was everything's canceled. What do we do? Like at that point it was just like nobody's going anywhere. You ain't going nowhere, Bob Dylan. So coming into spring last academic year, I think in terms of academic years. So coming into this spring 2021, we were trying to figure out like, okay, there are still a lot of ways to explore, discover, explore, reflect, still several ways to explore from home. People are tired, they are isolated, they are video conference fatigued. What can still be done to kind of bring that light back into experiential learning? So one of the things I tried, and this is part of why I love the ePortfolio option within my own teaching, is I was supposed to take students to Japan. I was supposed to take them in 2020. The Olympics were canceled. My Japan program was canceled. I was supposed to take them in 2021, canceled. So I was like, I still want to offer this course and I still want it to have this applied experiential learning component. What can I do? And I'll get to this in a minute. I'm not arguing that they're the same or that you could replace an on-the-ground experience with a virtual one. But for me, the creative process of trying to think about how can I do as much of an immersive experience in the virtual space, and then how can I help students make meaning, like do that reflective component. And I thought like, well, okay, there are so many resources through podcasts, through video blogs. How could I bring in some of those things where you have vloggers actively touring sites that were open in 2018, but still looked like that? How can we read websites that are still being updated from people on the ground, even though we can't go there? How can we bring like my colleagues, scholars, activists, colleagues from Japan into the classroom virtually? So it started with those questions. But then I was like, okay, but this is a visual culture class, visual and memorial culture. How can I then get the students to think about reflection and generation or regeneration of ideas using multimodal composition, using images layouts, captioning, incorporation of a variety of media. And so that is where the ePortfolio really brought it together for us, because there were lots of different little components that all came together in, I called it a travel guide because I wanted it to sort of be like riffing on that genre of, if you take a very high-end global tour of X place and they give you your itinerary and whatever, nicely packaged, it looks so pretty. I wanted them to kind of build on that sort of bougie thing in a reflective multimedia kind of way where they were applying, our concepts and stuff. So it still followed like day one, day two, we're going to go here, we're going to go here. But then they took us there in the portfolio. Like you had the media components, you
Yeah.
had them unpacking.
Mhm.
They're like, here is this map. You'll notice it's organized spatially in this way, or the route takes you through this certain narrative. And then here's a video component of someone doing that, or here's a link to, like a 3D immersion in a museum exhibit or whatever. And they would
Okay.
take you through that while having to think about, what colors am I using? What fonts am I using that fit my material? How can I block out the text? Like all of these composition questions that are important in a variety of fields, but also in visual culture, like where we're really talking about like this stuff it's fraud, it's political, it's related to identity, like it's not neutral. So how can you employ it and kind of stake your claim on this space? So that was one way global learning looked. And the thing that I learned from that, and I definitely wouldn't have expected, because I'm kind of at the other end. Like there are early adopters, and then there are like cave dwelling troglodytes, and I'm definitely on the troglodyte side. Like I just am not um, pro technology for technology's sake. And that's a caricature, but it's like something it was a prejudice I had. Through this experience, I realized like, whoa, 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 whoa. The virtual space is doing something really interesting and really different. And now if I teach, as I'm supposed to, the same course in the spring, where theoretically we'll actually go to Japan in May, I am still going to include some of those virtual components because I think it illustrated so many interesting things about how we see things and how we navigate space, and how the students can plan their time on the ground, and then how they can reflect on it and do kind of a meta analysis, bring it all together
Right.
when they are finished traveling. So now, like, I'm hoping in the next iteration to bring it together, the virtual and the physical, and kind of realize where some of that bleeds together.
I love that. It's so. First of all, congratulations. You are so creative, and I I have a I just have this feeling that your students must have loved it, even though they couldn't be there. I mean, look, we all know what the situation is and was, and uh, that you still provided a window where they could get to see, the other side of the world is pretty special and magical. And but at the same time, there's something, as you were describing that, I kept thinking like there's almost like this weird science fiction, sort of almost like archaeological, like what if like we dig back into what we could find on the internet in 2018 and figure out what the world looked like back then,
Yeah.
and it's like it's actually kind of like super fun in a like I said, it almost feels like a science fiction class, if you are from like 2080 and the world, I mean, global warming had taken place, and you want to see, hey, what did Japan look like in 2018? Guess
You'll
what?
have,
This might be these are the actual ways to do
yes, totally. And actually, like, one thing that I realized is, I mean, with Japan in particular, since you brought up the Olympics earlier,
them.
is, so let's say we are not getting to travel until 2022, or God forbid, 2023. And so I'm having them do some of these virtual things that were put on YouTube in 2017, 2018, 2016 to prepare, to get familiar with a space, to
Mm,
talk to us about its significance or whatever. And then they get on the ground and they're like, it doesn't look like I thought it looked. I can't navigate it the way I thought I navigated it. Like realizing, like, in just a year or 2 years or instantaneously,
mhm,
that space changed. And like, just that helps us see, in terms of visual culture, it helps us see even that, vlog tour is constructed. People are making choices, they're leaving things out, but also like the world keeps changing and we have these moments where it gets frozen. And that is kind of how this is science fiction in Jill's brain, but like that's how it gets sort of solidified, and like that's not reality because it's already moved on. So I love that stuff.
yeah, I think that's really cool. Now, I have heard this rumor that you also are an expert martial artist.
Oh, hardly, but did I feel pretty excited about karate being in the Olympics? I admit it, I did.
So you are a practitioner of karate?
Yes. So I, during graduate school, I trained in a particular form of karate for many years. Then I didn't go to graduate school where I live now, so I moved to where I am now. And that lineage, martial arts loves its lineages. That
Yep.
lineage didn't, no one was training in it down where I am now. And so at that point, I was like, I loved my form of karate. I did not want to change to a new form of karate. So I was like, if I'm going to keep doing martial training, I need to do something totally different. And so I went into kendo, which is Japanese. People say Japanese sword fighting, but there are a few different kind of sword fighting or fencing type martial arts coming out of Japan. It's one of them. It's one where you actually hit each other with sticks. There are others where it's like more about sword drawing and things like that. This is one where you hit people with sticks. So that was wonderful. I did that for a couple of years. Um, I guess I have just kind of like a soft, mushy head. So I had a couple of like concussions and things. It wasn't Kendo's fault. It's not normal for people. Um, One of them wasn't even Kendo related, but it made it hard to do Kendo. I walked into a tree, Jeff. That's a true story. And so I just, in being kind of forced to be like, okay, martial arts is still important to you. Kendo, maybe not going to work out for you long term. So then I went into another form of karate, and that's what I'm training now. So I I love engaging. Expert is not true. That is a vicious rumor.
But you are an active practitioner.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
have you? And I don't want to put you on the spot. So if it was too far fetched, please just go. We can go to the next topic. But have you learned? I mean, I know very little, aside from what's on movies, about martial arts. But are there aspects of your practice that have um, made you a better learner? Has it informed you pedagogically and as an educator?
Oh, I love that question. It's not too far afield. It's just unexpected and unusual to be asked it. Um, so, I mentioned that I started karate during grad school,
Mhm.
and I think it would be easy to just say, like we all know, that exercising during periods of high stress and intense brain use is important. It's important for mental health, it's important for our bodies. But I don't think, even back then, that I fully appreciated how much it wasn't just the outlet. It was the discipline and the centering and the kind of sort of like you were talking about with Olympic athletes, not that I was at that level, but the way you're having to recalculate, recalibrate, train through something that's very difficult, see the other side, come back to it again, review what you've done. How can I do that better? While strengthening your body. Like, okay, I'm going to do these calisthenics. Or in karate, there's kind of a tradition of a whole bunch of like training apparatuses, stuff you punch, stuff you pick up,
Mhm.
stuff you hit. And that all of those things come together in what it means to do that martial art. I don't think it's too much of a stretch. I mean, it might seem kind of touchy-feely, but I really do think it's true for me that helped me understand integrative learning. It helped me understand that the scholarly work that I do is embodied. And so like my own body limits how I work, how I teach, but also that the things that I teach are themselves embodied, that people in bodies are doing these things, and that your body dictates how and when and whatever, like how you do them, and that's important theoretically, like in terms of philosophy that I work with. Like I care about the kind of interaction between bodies now, and I feel 100% like I didn't care about that stuff before I started doing karate. I just didn't think about it. Now I
Mhm.
do. And as time has gone on, and now I have trained in different arts, I think all kinds of other things have come in to my awareness and appreciation. Like I was saying, these lineages they're sedimented, they're
Mhm.
important,
Right.
but they're constructed, like
Mhm.
they're constructed through the stories told,
Mhm.
through the politics of the time and the politics of transmission, all of this stuff. So, like, that is directly aligned with the kinds of stuff that I teach. And I have to remind myself, like, your founder is not necessarily your founder. Like an important figure, maybe yes, if that figure was even historical, like was actually existed. Um, so those kinds of things are important reminders. And then I think the third thing that where like martial arts and teaching and educating kind of came together was actually I had cancer a few years back, and the way that experience, that very embodied experience, helped me kind of reconsider. I mean, I trained the whole time as much as I could, helped me kind of reconsider like my embodiment in the classroom and as a scholar, and accepting my limits, and where can I push through? Where can I not push through? What do I learn from that? And how can I better support students in understanding their own learning process, the limits of embodiment? Like, I feel like I was trained, and maybe you were too, in an era of like, you enter the classroom and you leave everything at the door. And I realized like I couldn't leave stuff at the door. Like I still had to stand up in front of people when I was weak or whatever.
Mhm.
And maybe it wasn't fair to expect students to either. And so there are still ways I try to talk to them about professional presentation, or consider your audience when you're considering sharing, like especially in their portfolios and things like that. But just martial arts has been the anchor for a lot of those things. And I think it has also anchored the connection between my body, my personal life, and my academics, both teaching and scholarly. That was a long answer, but it was because you caught me unawares. I had to think my way through it.
Well, first of all, it's beautiful the way you think, um, and I'm
You're
glad that we
indulgent.
got.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got to witness that. And now you mentioned, I mean, I can't help but you got concerned that you said that you had cancer a few years back. Are you all better now?
Yeah, in the way that, I think once you've had it, you kind of always live under the sign of cancer. But yeah, I am well. Thank you for
Mhm.
asking.
Well, I'm really glad that you had survived, even though going through it must have been, um, you know, must not have been easy.
Thank you. But it did help me kind of think about how I wanted to talk to my pre-med students about the
Mm,
humanity of medical practitioners. And I feel
mm,
like when I talk to them now, I am able to bring in concrete aspects from that experience that I hope are things they might take with them into the medical field.
Yeah. Well, those are exactly the kind of things that students student need. Like we were talking about sort of the difference between liberal arts and just learning something that's purely skill based. And your pre-med students are going to need your experience that they can hear from your advice, as much as they need their sort of hardcore medical school training, from what's in the books.
Yeah,
Mm.
the story I
Which
like
is
to
the
tell
truth.
them is one of the oncologists who, when I was in the waiting room, I saw this picture of a neuron on the wall, but it was an art picture, like not just a
Not like a
textbook kind
diagram.
of image. Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
And I was like, that's interesting. And I went and checked it out, and I realized it was created, like, it was signed by the doctor, the oncologist I was going to see. Like, he had displayed his own
Wow.
art in the waiting room, and I was like, oh, this bodes well. And then when I was in, like the exam room, there were these huge Monet pictures, but it wasn't water lilies for viewers who are familiar with Monet and the very famous water lilies. It was these obscure Monet pictures that I love. And I was like, who would pick this for an exam room? Who would know to pick this for an exam room?
Mhm.
So I realized, first of all, that I was caricaturing this medical professional unfairly. But then also, like, what that did to me in terms of feeling about, my relationship with this medical practitioner, um, my appreciation for his appreciation for these other areas that he could bring into the
Mhm.
practice and realize that they would affect his patients. Like, it was just so cool. And then I found out that he was a field medic, like a military field medic before all of that. And I thought, here is a person who's brought together such a variety of experiences and like brought them into his practice.
Yeah.
And that's something I kind of want to help students see, that it's not like this beeline toward your boards and your residency and your fellowship. Like, you gotta bring these other things in because you're going to have clinical patients and family members from all kinds of places. Does everyone walk into his waiting room and care about the Monet on the wall? Like, no, I'm sure not. Um, but yeah, it's just one example that I like to give them, of like, hey, think about the uh, the surrounding,
Mhm.
and be very good technical masters of your medical knowledge too. I
but
just
this
imagine
is
all kinds of free time for them that they don't have.
but
It's not really fair.
but this is why this idea of integrative learning or interdisciplinary studies is so wonderful and was so important. It they sometimes do. I know that it appears to people like this feels touchy feely and feels too, like soft, or like, oh boy, I hope we're not paying for this,
Uh-huh.
class. But this is the class that you want to take. These are the experiences that actually help shape your life in different ways.
I think that that actually is another place where I like how ePortfolio software can come in,
Mhm.
because I think, one of the things that I do, it wasn't so much in the course that I was talking about before, but in my discovery seminar, my first year seminar, I do a lot of work with students as they are crafting their portfolios to say, bring in what you're hoping your professional trajectory would be, bring in connections to your other classes. And I think that then you have a professional artifact that fits with these other areas that they might basically value more. Like, their intro bio class is maybe their priority in terms of their time and their effort and whatever.
Mhm.
But to make those intentional bridges and then think about how you're going to
Mhm.
present that helps them reflect on their journey through that path. Like, and it can be very concrete skills related stuff. Like I learned about why data visualization is important, and not neutral. I can imagine that this principle of visual culture could actually go into the organization of a spreadsheet that makes meaning out of that data better or whatever. I don't know that that's going to sell their parents, but I do think I'm getting a little bit better at helping students see, like, it's not that your humanities class is over here and your science classes are over here. Like, they can be more Venn diagram-y. And where that happens is in the process of connection, analysis, reflection. And I like to use the portfolio for that, but you could do any kind of reflective activity to help these first semester students start building those connections so it just becomes part of their habit.
Mhm. Now, we'll wrap up in with this, and I've sort of been asking a lot of our other education scholars about it, given especially this last year and a half of um, COVID, and George Floyd, and and then maybe even going further back in just in the last few years, the um, things like the Me Too movements, um, and all of that. I feel like there are students today, students going into class today in 2021. You're going to have a batch of new students coming in. Um, I feel like that they're going to come in with sort of a very special and a very different set of perspectives. Um, I don't have any like really sort of grand question about it, but just want to get your take. This is like before your semester begins. What are
Yeah.
some of your expectations? What are some of the things that you are thinking about welcoming students coming out of this period um of everything from there's also the political pieces too. I didn't even mention, right? How are you thinking about how are you welcoming these students? What are the kind of mindset do you think they're going to come in with, and what do you hope to achieve?
Yes. So, a huge question. A few things, recognizing that our time is coming to a close. One is recognizing that assumptions about the students really need to be suspended. More than ever, we're having students come in from a wider and wider variety of life experiences over the last 2 years. I have to recognize that many of them may have also deferred entry into college, taken a gap year, or possibly attempted college and the pandemic environment was too difficult. I had so many more students than usual have to leave last year for medical reasons, and some of them will be re entering, but basically anew. They never were on campus. We have second years who have never seen our campus. So I think we need to be, I mean, as always, but whatever, more intentional and careful in our welcoming, in our establishing community, in our thinking through supports. I am prepared as an advisor to support a wider variety of questions, concerns, feeling kind of adrift, like a little bit more separated maybe from what you thought you wanted to do or how you thought you could do it, or whether you feel prepared or whether you feel like you can be successful, and just taking that slowly. But also that people are coming with these areas of urgent concern. Like, college is not feeling frivolous to anybody. And the degree to which that would have ever been the case has a lot to do with privilege, of course. But now I'm finding that even very privileged students are coming very gravely concerned about thinking through race and class and violence and politics that have shaped their privilege or shaped their experience. So, one of the things I am um, thinking through right now as I plan the discovery seminar is how can we unpack the arrival to campus from many different positions from all around the globe, from many different experiences, and think about how to bring them safely, I mean safely for the student, into the light in their work. How can you cultivate an educational experience that allows students to address those questions of ultimate concern? I guess is kind of like my driving question right now. I'm still working on techniques, um, some of the skills development for how to mediate or how to support difficult conversations in the classroom. But for me, in terms of how I teach and how I see the discovery seminar functioning in relation to this milestone portfolio that they'll do in their last semester, I think one of our concerns, a lot of us that are working with the milestone portfolio, is like, hey, maybe you don't have a narrative of growth and triumph and overcoming. You may feel like that's what you're supposed to deliver. How can we um, stop that and not say, you have to say you came in feeling unprepared or undeveloped and you got to the end of college and you felt prepared and fully formed, like that is not the point. How can we take it down to a much more concrete level of, here were a variety of experiences, some of them good, some of them not. Here is how I processed them and what I tried next. But like, there's no perfect arc or full closed circle in this experience. And I think that trajectory or spiral or whatever spatial metaphor you want is going to be even more fragmented, even bumpier. And like, how can we acknowledge that and think that maybe good things will come from having contended with difficult stuff?
Mhm. That's I know that it's a difficult question, but I think you answered very, very eloquently. But there's also this sense of, look, we have to figure it out. I mean, the students are going to come in, and not just students, everyone coming in.
Yes.
We have by definition gone through a severe trauma,
Yes.
um, right? With in fact, life-threatening trauma, and seeing other people, going through life-threatening trauma, and maybe having families and friends um, going through that, and maybe losing them,
Yep.
and severe isolation, a sense of, like, what we take, at least in the United States, for granted, which is sort of a lot of, like, always been like free to move around, free to travel, free to do all. We didn't have that, for a period of time, and even if we take away some of the other things that also are happening in parallel, it's, at a minimum we can say that this is your base point,
Yeah.
coming in, and I do think that as educators, working with students, if they are especially traditional college age, this is a very important time in their, developmental schedule, really, and trying to work with it, and think about the mental health aspect of it, and all of that is going to be incredibly challenging and important. And I hope that you, and other educators, will get to put your heads together, and make it all work. But I really feel like that it is exactly the type of thinking and the approach, the creative approach, the willingness to allow students to express themselves and allow them to bring in different experiences together and make sense of them. This is what I think above all going to be the most um, useful strategy and probably the most beneficial strategy for students to heal from this trauma, and probably for all of us too. So I hope that your semester goes smoothly. I know you're going to have all these new students coming in, and I hope that travel will resume again, so you can get to take your students to Japan, and then you can get to do this really fun sort of comparison, like the with what happened last year, and then maybe able to learn from that and merge what you got in a virtual sort of world, using your portfolios and try to merge that with the physical travel. But I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of this wisdom. I really feel like that uh, there are probably many educators, hopefully I hope that many educators like you, facing these same questions this fall. But I also hope that those who are maybe either struggling or trying to not able to figure out what how to deal with all of this, can take some ideas out of this conversation and bring it to your classrooms, and because I think that your students will really benefit from it.
I hope so too. And I think even if a point of this conversation has led you, the viewer, to or listener, to think that is totally not how I would do it, or I could not handle doing that. Are you kidding me? That too helps you bring something into your classroom for the fall and going forward.
All right. Well, Jill, it is really it's lovely to have met you. And I hope that you come back and join us again at some point in the future. And I will, uh, keep an eye on what's going on with the global learning and undergraduate research at Oxford College at Emory. And I hope that we continue to see more of that. And maybe at some point, talk to some of your students as well.
Oh, I would love that. You would love
Yeah.
hearing from them. They're a
Yeah.
great bunch. But thank you so much.
I bet. Okay. All right. Hey, thanks again, and take care.
You too.
Digication Scholars Conversations is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative ePortfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. This episode was produced by Drew Albanesius. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching.